So you've heard some strong words from politicians on this, but what can Canada really do? Let's get a reality check from Ian Lee, an associate professor at Carleton University's Sprott School of Business. So Ian, you feel this could mark the beginning of the end for Canada's auto manufacturing industry. Why?
I do, and I don't have any dog in this hunt, don't consult with any of these parties whatsoever. I was profoundly influenced by the late brilliant visionary Sergio Marchionne, the late Windsor native, Windsor, Ontario, and the CEO of Fiat Chrysler. And he talked incessantly in the years before he very sadly passed away from cancer. He talked about the changing auto industry in the world. He said, look, it's always been capital intensive, but it's becoming much more capital intensive. The amounts are becoming gargantuan. The R&D is going through the roof because of the need for autonomous vehicles and EVs. He actually went so far as to say the world auto market cannot support 10 giant auto companies. The market isn't big enough. They got to consolidate. So taking from that point, and you look at this, Canada can only survive if we have access to a very large market. And there's only 3 very large markets for autos. One's called China, one's Europe, and one's the US. And all 3, by the way, protect their manufacturing sector, including, most recently, the US. And so, unless Mr. Trump reverses his decision, and it seems unlikely based on his track record, I think that those tariffs are here to stay. If they're here to stay, those cars are not economic, and those car companies will close those plants in the months and few years ahead and close them down.
All right, let me ask you a couple of follow-up questions to that. First of all, I was thinking small countries that have what appear to be a thriving auto sector, and Sweden comes to mind. So if Sweden can have Volvo, why can't Canada have an auto manufacturer?
That's a very good point. And Sweden they have a great big market. It's called the European Union. And they sell, I've been to Europe many times, and they sell, Volvo is huge in Europe. If you go on the Autobahn, for example, you can see Volvo trucks and Volvo cars everywhere. But again, the critical point in any industry, especially manufacturing, where the construction costs, one plant is $5 billion, just one auto plant. And you need multiple plants to be a company. And so the amounts are so large, you need very large production runs to achieve the economies of scale to break even. So Volvo is accessing the European market with over 500 million people. So they are doing what one must do to survive in that industry. We've only survived for the last 70 years since Autopac, when our industry was going down the tubes at the time, was doing very badly. We only survived because we did gain access to a huge market called the United States. And we had it from then until roughly 2 days ago when the president said, sorry, we're going to make those cars going forward.
Okay, my other follow-up question, in a country of more than 30 million people, so not more than 300 million, but more than 30 million, we do manufacture for the most part, and I know parts go back and forth across the border, but we do manufacture some cars that are, Japanese automakers, US automakers, but the cars are built here. What about promoting those cars in Canada and maybe even giving them a little bit of a tariff edge so that somebody chooses, actually Edge is interesting because the Ford Edge used to be built in Oakville, but something that encourages Canadians to buy some of those cars that are primarily built in Canada?
I'm not suggesting there's no market for automobiles. It's a little over 1 million. I think it's 1.2 million cars are actually purchased. I stand to be corrected on that. I don't have all my data memorized, but I think it's 1.2 million. But when you look at that, Toyota produces 10 million cars a year. Volkswagen is number 2 at I think 9.2, 9.5 million. These are gigantic numbers, and we are a small market. And so what I'm suggesting is, if we can access another market, sorry, let me just digress for a moment, Ian. Toyota and Honda are interesting because they're not American companies. They are already in the US market. They're in the Canadian market. They probably can continue to produce for the Canadian market. But I think we're going to see the GMs and the Fords and the Stellantis gradually withdraw because they understand their market is the US. It's vastly larger, and the tariffs are going to make it uneconomic to export those cars made in Canada to the US. and we export most of our cars that we actually manufacture in Canada. They will become uneconomic with the tariffs. That's the whole point of the tariffs, is to make those cars uneconomic in our country. It's the arithmetic that's driving this. I mean, people think it's Donald Trump. Yes, he made the decision, but it's the arithmetic of the tariffs that make the cars uneconomic on the U.S. side, and we export most of the cars made in Canada.
Yeah. Okay. One last question, and this is why we have you on the program. As you say, you have no economic interest or political connections to any of the parties here, and the answer to this next question might make you like an unpopular guy walking around Oakville or Alliston or Brampton. But
Exactly.
do you think that maybe Canada should redirect the money that it puts into the auto industry? I know there are a lot of canola farmers and softwood lumber producers, who have a great interest in your answer to this, that we should subsidize the auto industry less and put that money in other places.
I've actually, Ian, come to that conclusion. I read a whole series of studies that were done before Australia exited auto manufacturing in 2017 and the postmortems. They were done by consulting companies, by government agencies, by academics, and they were really good. They were very objective, empirical, impartial. And, the doom and gloom that people predicted that Australia was going to, collapse or decline precipitously because they exited auto manufacturing did not happen. In fact, their GDP, average income per person, which was below Canada at the time, has gone above Canada now because they pivoted to resources, just as you suggested. Now they pivoted to mining and they pivoted to all the other resources they have. And in our country, I argued, and I've been talking to my students about this, we don't have a comparative advantage in manufacturing. We like to think we do. I know Premier Ford says we do, but we don't have the production runs and the scale of population that Europe, China, US has. But we do have a comparative advantage in resources, in agriculture, in potash, in nuclear, in oil, and gas, in critical minerals. We're sitting on literally trillions of dollars in yet unexploited natural resources in this country that could fuel an incredible investment boom, because there are investors around the world waiting to come in and develop those resources.
Really interesting having your perspective on this. Ian Lee is an associate professor at Carleton University Sprott School of Business. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Ian. Thank you.